Good.
There we go. All right, we're live.
Okay,
All right.
welcome everyone. I call to order the Rockport Select Board meeting for Monday, June 26, 2023. First item on our agenda is we have a public hearing for a new liquor license for Penobscot Bay Ice Company doing business as Graffin Brothers Seafood Market for an on-premises license. John, do you want to briefly summarize?
Yes, so this is a common for two new members, so welcome. This is a fairly common affair that anytime you have new liquor licenses requires a public hearing, assuming there are no issues with the applicant and assuming you grant the license, there's really no need to have another public hearing. So those renewals happen internally. But this is an opportunity for the public to say, well, should this license be granted? The masses.
Record reflect that there is no public hearing.
Right, that's right.
Other than the applicant.
So in any event, this is a very open and shut matter here for the seafood market here up on Union Street. Graffin Brothers has been in business 76 years. 76?
77.
77, okay.
And as I understand it, you already have a license to sell retail wine and beer and maybe other
And have had
things.
since 2007.
Okay, and then this is an application to be able to serve in the eating area so that people can order a beer or wine with their meal. So, do I ask for other public I mean, the board doesn't, it's not the board will discuss it later.
Right, yeah, this is really for.
Okay, well,
Public.
since there is, unless Lenny, you'd like to say anything about this?
The only thing I'd like to say in regards to it is we don't serve at tables or anything like that. We are a counter, you come up, you order, we call your name, you come get it. The way we work this out with the main liquor inspector is that we will have a separate section behind at the counter that's manned at all times
Okay.
with a specific assortment that's available for on-site consumption, not our regular stuff. You can't go to the main, wine counter and get a bottle and bring it to the counter and then pop it open. And a lot of these are gonna be single serve.
Mhm.
They'll be manned by somebody of the appropriate age. So,
Yeah.
we've had lots of requests for this over the years. So this is why we finally got to the point we figure we can pursue it and make it happen when we have the equipment and staff to do this. To
Great.
meet what the customers would like, particularly those who are traveling from away.
Yeah, well, that's great. Okay.
And for the record, I'll be abstaining.
Good.
Conflict of interest.
Yeah,
Is it abstention or recusal?
it's worded as
Yes,
abstention, but yeah.
abstention, yeah.
Great, okay, well, with that, I'll close the public hearing, and we will actually vote on the liquor license later in our agenda. So thanks, Lenny. John, town manager's report and update.
I'll try to keep it brief. We have, obviously, we've had quite a bit of activity since my last report, which was at the early part of May. So there's obviously quite a bit that's gone on since then. We have two new members of the select board, Michael and Kim.
Yeah, I should say, and welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to have both of you here.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah,
It's it'll be, anytime you change 40% of a group, there's new things and new opportunities, and we'll see how all that, how much fun you'll have along this process. So there'll be good times and bad for sure. Jeff Parker was elected to the budget committee, Lee Goss to the library committee, and Sarah Bradley Prindiville to the school board. All of the items that were on the warrant that the board created last spring passed overwhelmingly, including the budget, the RES project, and the West Rockport Fire Station. So all of those items are moving, at some pace. Obviously, the first thing being the budget, so that way the town office remains open on July 1st. So that's that's obviously the big change. I would say, you know, in sort of the conversation I've heard a lot of positives from folks who like the fact that there was a lot of people who were involved in the budget process in terms of voting the actual approval. I did get a couple complaints, you know, concerns that their voice wasn't perhaps heard. It's a difficult thing, right? So that's something that the board will have to weigh next spring when you work on your warrant. But, you know, I think there were a lot of people who enjoyed that during COVID for everyone to sort of vote on these things, and most notably the budget. And so
I actually heard favorable comments. People appreciated being able to vote on things that they haven't usually been able to since they can't go to the town meetings.
I just want to interject a little bit here too. Same thing, is everybody that talks to me has wanted it as a ballot item, because not everybody can go to a town meeting. Second, we didn't have a place to hold a town meeting this year. And third, I think we should flip-flop it. Have a town meeting that allows people to come, discuss the items if they want, and then you would vote the following day. So we would like do a town meeting on a Monday and a vote on a Tuesday. That way people still get to be heard, they can still put their comments out in the, more like a public hearing, which we do a public hearing and nobody shows up for. So if there is a problem, we're here, there's no one else here.
Yeah.
So, you know, but that's the point. We have a public hearing, we have budget committees, we have town manager meetings with the budget. Nobody shows up, you get to the end. So I think we should just do another public meeting and say, this is your last chance to make your comments, tomorrow's the vote. You know, and that way people are still getting their democratic voice. You know, as in, what was the comment from Thomas Jefferson or something, where that came from, you know, or I don't remember, one of the presidents that pointed that out. I was reading about it. So I think we should consider that as an option, just flip-flop the dates.
Yeah.
Either do it the Thursday before or something, so that people have time to still early vote if they want, or whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
Would that be a specific meeting just
Yeah.
to go over all the budget items?
Yeah.
So it would be clarified for everybody?
That way, we're not losing that public interaction, everybody gets their voice, just like we always do, and you get, you know, but I feel it's more important to have more than 50 people vote on a multi-million-dollar budget.
Okay, well, we'll
So,
talk about that in
I
the
know,
spring.
but I wanna
good
put the
thoughts.
comments
Yeah.
out there now, so everybody's thinking about this, this thought.
Yeah,
Because I've been sitting on this for a while, so.
I think that's a pretty good idea.
yeah.
Moving through, one thing I really wanted to raise, and we talked a little bit at the department head meeting. Kim and Michael attended our department head meeting just as an introduction, so they could sort of see how that process works a little bit. And then we did a ride around that I thought was going to be brief, but still took longer than I wanted it to. But one thing that came up at that meeting was the valuation update, and the three of you certainly talked about it, were involved in that process, and is relatively new for these two. But I don't think the public necessarily understands that this process is going on. So letters will be going out shortly, and while there's also going to be some changes in law, I suspect, from the legislature related to the let's say ill-conceived law that stabilized rates for those or taxes for those over 65. You're also going to probably see a change in that law here this week. So I don't know where that comes. I don't know where that ends up, and I don't think if we asked 165 legislators, they'd know what the answer is. But what I do know is our values are going to be adjusted, and those letters will be going out. And I suspect we're going to have some substantial increases, and that will be a challenge. Certainly, there will be opportunities for residents who have questions to reach out and talk with KRT, just as they did last time. But as we all know, we were low, And if we're that much lower than where our state valuation is, that puts other things in danger that, as the three of you, sort of weighed in on, we just can't afford not to address.
Will the letter explain that that's part of the rationale for needing to go back out and redo the valuation?
Yeah, we sent a letter last year, and narrative from the company that Carrie is working with in Camden to sort of do a PR for that effort in Camden. He's brought them in to at least start to work on this letter and sort of address some of those concerns so people understand what are we doing, where are we going, what is Rockport, why is it going up again,
Right.
why? That's the thing I think that's really going to drive folks,
And that's partly to stay within the percentages of required valuations, right?
That's exactly right.
Otherwise, we
We
don't.
leave
get
state
much
money on the table.
State
if
money,
we-
if we, okay.
Exactly, and it's not even, and it's, yes, it's
Partly.
well, it's the town, but also it's the individual.
Mhm.
So the individual would lose out with the amount of the homestead exemption that they wouldn't be able to apply, we wouldn't be able to apply towards. We wouldn't be able to apply the same percentage of our personal property. So if that hurts everybody's value. So there's so many things that could harm Rockport residents and taxpayers to not do that. Now, then, sort of in the next breath, we have the reval. So the reval went out to bid. You saw we had two bids. One was at 210, one was at 285,000. 210 was lower than the amount that we had budgeted or talked about through the budget process over the last 2 years. So we accepted the bid from KRT. They will begin soon. Usually when you have a reval, that's when you see the increase in values. But because we were forced to do this early, the reval won't actually have that big of an impact, I suspect, on the value side because we've captured it over the last 2 years. So what it will do though is ensure that we have accurate data. If you don't have accurate data, you're sunk because the moment says, oh, well, we have this, we have old data or bad data, and we have a valuation based upon that, and they come in and say, oh no, I have 1 bedroom instead of 4. Well, then guess what? We abate, which then means it comes from the bottom line, which then means we're in a worse situation. So the more accurate our data is, good, bad, or indifferent of value, the better it is for everybody.
And to clarify for people who might be listening in.
Go for it, yes.
Well, I'm gonna ask you to specify, but
Yeah.
a reevaluation was last done years ago,
Yep,
right?
2005.
2005 was our last, and that's the one where they physically see what the properties have.
Right.
To make sure the town records are right for that.
That's exactly right.
So then the other part that's going on
Yep.
currently is
It's a property value equalization project.
equalization.
And the idea is to try to equalize our values to sales. So really what we're doing, we're using sales data, or the company we've hired is using sales data with what we know of what's in the properties, and we're adjusting the sales, the tables of value based upon that.
About what the markets are doing.
Exactly. So, for example, if my home is, and a number of homes in my neighborhood are selling for twice the value that my house currently is, that's gonna go into the sales table for that neighborhood. So not just my home, but everybody in my neighborhood likely will see that rise. And as we all know, that's happened a lot for probably all of us sitting here, as we've seen that sold for how much?
Yeah.
How many times have we said that over the last 3 years
Yeah.
or 4 years? It's nuts. So, unfortunately, that means we have to keep pace. So, yeah. Let's see. So, I think the last thing I just want to mention is the Donut Festival. We are overjoyed with the response to that. I mean, thank goodness, we had the worst weather you could possibly have in early June. And that's saying something, but it's accurate. And just the volunteers and staff who just gave up their weekend, and not just gave up their weekend, they were there the whole time. Really impressive. It was a great event. I think there were different parts of town and different ways everyone sort of had their little bit that they could enjoy. Some were into the donuts, some were into the, motor booty, some were into, the bridge dinner, whatever, or that ended up at the harbor. there was a lot of different ways people felt it could be a part of it, which I thought was a really great thing. So we're already sort of making steps. We've sort of gauged information from vendors, who've all sold out of all the donuts possible they could make. And how do we do this better next year? That's the real trick. How do you deal with 70 degrees and a light breeze off the water and the sun shining? What do you do with all those people show up? We had a great parking situation. It was wonderful with the buses, but that's the scary part. So I think it's a good idea. I think people have really enjoyed it. Now it's just, how do you improve it? How do you make it live and not grow beyond Rockport's means, like making sure it remains a Rockport sized event, not something that just overtakes the town and causes people to, run for the hills, which can happen sometimes. These events happen, so.
Well, definitely a great success.
Can we request, the financials on that one, and we get them together to make sure it didn't cost taxpayers any money?
Yep, yeah, no, we've been running, we've had warrants that Jim's come through, but the final accounting, cause that's the trick, right, is if you do this and it costs us,
Well, I know we had a lot of donors and supporters and businesses and the whole event, but, I wanna make sure it's not impacting our already large budget.
yeah, right, absolutely.
I'm not opposed to having the festival, I thought it was great, but,
Right,
Make a comment on that?
What's that?
Can I make a comment on the festival?
Sure.
So, from my observation post up the road here. So, and just to disclose, we were one of the sponsors, but
Thank you.
I didn't recognize a lot of the people that came to the festival. There was a lot of people that came from out of town, a lot of families that came from out of town. A lot of people spent money in my store I'd never seen before. So there is that aspect of it, that what it brought to the town besides what the festival brought in itself.
Right, who might say, oh, this is a great place, I'm coming back.
So as soon as I saw the parade, I told my staff, start making chicken fingers. So, I saw all the kids and it was like, they're coming here after they're done.
Well, that's a good comment to have,
Yeah.
because the harbor committee actually, I wasn't at the meeting, cause I couldn't, but that actually was on their minutes is, was it beneficial to the vendors, the businesses in the town, how did the businesses feel about that? So it's good to hear that
For ours,
comment.
yes.
Right, but if it positively impacted yours, I'm sure it positively impacted like Freya and everything else right here. It'd be good to get that feedback, and I'm not saying that if it did cost the town a little bit of money to bring that in, that it's a bad thing. I just wanna make sure that we're not, didn't come in and we did it and it cost us $20,000. If it costs us $1,000 or $2,000, well, that's.
right, yeah,
That's reasonable,
yeah.
but,
People did come to town and they did drop cash.
yeah,
So-
right,
so-
and which is a
Like to
good
hear.
thing, so it's positive in a way, I just wanna make sure that if we can get enough sponsors, that it's basically paying for itself.
Yeah, and I would add to like my hope from this is that we use this as a springboard for how we handle all the events. Like we already have great individuals who contribute to Holiday on the Harbor and there's events like that, but this should be a springboard for how we handle, the summer, the concert series in the harbor and in the park and all these different things that we do with the Opera House. This could be, there's been a lot of questions about like, well, how do we make sure, these town events are we're making our money back out of the Opera House. If we build the right model off of something like this, it's a start. It's
Right.
not the answer, but it's a start in trying to figure out how does a town, invest in itself, but then also knows that it has businesses who are investing in all that mutual success.
Yep.
And we can use that to also help us keep our infrastructure.
Oh,
in
absolutely.
good shape.
Yeah, as long as we're thinking on that same path, I'm
Yeah,
good with it.
Yeah.
You know me,
I know you.
I love the numbers.
Takes a
You are.
Anything else on John's report? Next item is public input on non-agenda items. Since we don't have any I'm assuming Lenny doesn't have anything he wants to,
Well,
yeah. Next, amendments to the agenda. Then we get to the consent agenda. And the consent agenda, the idea would be, I think we'd vote, sort of break it out into the meeting minutes, committee resignations and reappointments, or would we vote the whole consent
We
agenda?
I
vote
think
the
we
whole
have to,
consent
I think we have
agenda,
to split it.
but you
though.
can split.
Yeah, I'm concerned about
We
the
have to do
meeting
A.
minutes, because Eric, Jim and I are the only ones who can vote on the May 8th minutes.
It's true.
And then we all can vote on the 14th.
It may require more pen in hand for you,
Yeah.
but I think that's a good point.
Okay, so let's take the minutes for May 8, 2023. Is there a motion to approve those?
Yeah. I move that the board approve the consent agenda for the May 8 meeting minutes as presented.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All those in favor? Jim, and then we'll show, would we just show abstentions then?
Yeah.
For Kim and Michael? Motion, Eric. Great. And then a motion for the June 14 minutes. And maybe now we can do the rest of the consent agenda, really, because we're all eligible to
could.
vote on that.
Except Kim
So these,
probably wants to.
these here,
Oh, yeah,
these
Kim
here
has
are
to,
par- yeah, these here are part of the consent agenda.
yeah, those are the votes from that agenda. I mean, from those minutes of that meeting.
Okay, because they're just a couple spelling things.
Uh,
Like Sarah's name, it's MCLEAN, and then LENI.
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
Which
Okay.
one is it, the 8th?
Um,
Eight,
So,
the action
Well,
item.
there was a action item, act on Donut Festival traffic control plan, and there was like a Shirley lessons to be learned. Rockport Harbor Hotel Manager Sarah McLean,
Is there a
her name
page
is
number on
spelled,
that?
page 39.
Page 39
Yeah.
of the.
Her last
May
name is
8
spelled MCLEAN.
see, I wouldn't know that.
So this is probably a good time to mention. It's a little strange. The official record in the bylaws, the official record of the meeting is the recording. But we also have this photocopy of the notes that the chair takes as sort of like a backup in a way of like concurrent. So if someone asks if you approve the minutes, you say yes. Obviously, the record needs to be accurate. The votes are wrong or what that, because that's part of that record. But there was a couple years ago, there was some question about how that worked and how the minutes, and there was a change to the bylaws to basically say the recording is the one that takes precedence. So you can
Right.
use that. I mean, still
And
make
the
the
only thing
changes.
is
I'm
really
just
the
saying.
votes that we're capturing, the.
Right, whereas like some groups like, ZBA, a lot of times the meeting minutes are almost like transcript, you know, and so it's a little bit different in this, so just as sort of an FYI, you all.
I can add just a little note for that vote to just point out Lenny, and then
Yeah,
Sarah
easy.
is MCL,
EAN.
Yeah.
okay. I'll add that.
I mean, just to stick the name spelling.
Yeah, well. Okay, so now we need, so Kim would recuse herself from the ZBA vote, is that what you're saying? So then let's just go ahead and do the June 14 organizational meeting minutes and vote to approve those. Is there a motion?
Are we good with them now?
Yep.
Okay, I move that the board approve the June 14th minutes as presented.
Second.
All right, let's see. Any discussion? All those in favor? Great. All right, I'm just gonna do this, May 8. Eric motion, and Kim, you were second, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, on to committee resignations. We have, the first item is Kim Grafham's resignation from the ZBA. Have a motion to accept that resignation reluctantly, but for good reason, for higher and better purposes.
Okay, I suppose if we have to.
Yeah,
Do you have a replacement picked out yet?
There is I don't know if it's a replacement for your seat, but there is one in the appointments.
Eric, you're making a motion?
Yes.
This meeting's gonna take forever.
I know. I move that we accept the resignation of Kim Grafton from the ZBA
And
board.
Jim is a second. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? And then Kim will be an abstention.
Staying.
Okay. All right, now, can we do the last two things?
We have to do Steve, right?
Yeah, so I was gonna try to combine Steve with the reappointments. Can I do it that way? Okay, last item under the consent agenda, we have Steve Smith's resignation from Parks and Beautification, as well as acting on reappointments to committee members for 3-year terms, and that's all reflected in the agenda.
Is that accurate? What's with-
There was a,
There was
Sally
actually
Cook
something
was
weird.
something.
yeah, that second page, the page that was landscape was correct.
The
And
next
then there was a, somehow another page got thrown in there, but that one is not an accurate.
So we're acting on the landscape page.
Right.
And the second page is not relevant to this.
Exactly, yep,
Good, because I was thinking, I don't think we have an investment committee anymore.
not anymore, no, I don't know how far back that goes, but.
How far
Yeah.
down are you?
Page 52.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the consent agenda with respect to the resignation of Steve Smith and these reappointments to committee members, for committee
Are we
members.
sure those reappointments are all right?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know, for some reason Sally Cook's name keeps popping into my head, but that's right, yeah.
Yeah, she's on the Parks Committee.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why, did we just appoint her or something? Whatever,
We may have,
maybe that's why.
some of these were recent appointees, I think the term.
And if they're taking over somebody else's term,
Yeah.
and that term,
Okay,
I think that's what happened on those, Eric.
all right. All right, so I move that we approve the remaining consent agenda as presented.
okay? Any discussion? All those in favor? Great. Okay. Now that we're all on the board, the consent agenda actually will work like a consent agenda,
Yes.
so. Unless you have more liquor licenses or ZBA. All right, action items. The first action item is, let me just get to that part of the agenda.
Speaking of liquor licenses.
Yes, exactly.
There's a lot of scrolling back and forth.
I know, I'm trying to get, I guess I have the
Can use
motion
this little
here.
guy here.
Yeah, the
What is it?
bookmarks.
Yeah,
Where?
do you see this bookmarks thing?
Oh,
If it's opened in, only if it's opened in Adobe though, I think.
Yeah,
I think it is.
So try, do you have that little guy?
No?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's probably open through the
Oh, there it
email.
is. Okay. Oh, okay.
cool. Okay, now,
I'm cooking with gas.
consent agenda.
So are we okay with approving?
Yeah, oh, it's on the backside. So, I think we've had the public hearing on the liquor license. We could go ahead and have a motion and a second and then discuss anything anybody has on this question.
Make a motion, we authorize it, however you wanna word that,
It's on the,
convey.
I know, I'm trying to find the right page.
Well, if I could find the right page, it's,
here it is, Jim.
Read
How about the
away.
cheat sheet?
well, I move the board approve the liquor license for Penobscot Bay Ice Company, doing business as Grafton Brothers Seafood Market.
Second.
Okay. All right, any discussion?
Good luck.
That's all good.
Good. Okay,
You'll have it for next year's donut festival.
that's right. All those in favor?
Aye.
And Kim's abstaining. All right, Eric, Jim did the motion, Eric the second.
You all need to sign,
Yes.
I'll send this around.
Okay.
Um,
Great,
You guys can do it.
congratulations, that's a nice thing to add to your business.
Now I'll go feed children.
See you, Lenny.
Thanks,
So one
Lenny.
public member is gone.
That's a really sad situation.
Password.
Okay, now, next item on the agenda is act on select board bylaws. And we got those at our June 14th meeting.
Yeah,
Yes.
And
I have
I
one,
actually did have,
I have one question.
okay, good.
Section 6 on the bylaws, the second line,
Something's missing, isn't
the
it? I found
sentence
that
is
too.
incomplete. I don't, all final decisions, the date, time, and place of the meeting.
So I suggested all final decisions shall reflect the date, time, and place of the meeting, the members of the body present or absent, and all motions, seconds, and votes taken by individual members. If there is a roll call, and such final decision shall become a part of the select board's permanent record as its minutes.
We're basically adding in the words shall reflect.
Yeah, and then at the end there, where it's not clear how it all relates, I added, and such final decision shall become a part of the select board's, just so that the sentence all held
Yeah.
together.
That makes sense to me.
And we'll let
That
them
will clarify it.
Yeah, yeah, no, good catch, yeah, I was like, I can't get, and I thought maybe we could take out tape recording, sort of cute, but we should just leave it recording.
I think that's fair. Yeah, not much that's happening on tape nowadays.
Audio visual,
Yeah.
change tape to audio visual.
Oh, yeah, why
sections.
not? Visual or video recording? No, visual?
Yeah, either, yeah.
Electronic,
AV,
electronic.
whatever Jeff does,
Yeah, when it comes.
There you go.
Yeah.
or the owl. I mean, it's
Or the
still-
owl.
It's still an AV recording.
Yeah, should we say AV recording? Or electronic recording? I like electronic recording, that just leaves it a
Covers
little
them
bit,
all.
Kind of covers all the bases.
yeah, who knows what it'll be in years to come. I had a few other things, but I wanna give everybody else a chance to.
Go for it.
Okay, under section 3 meetings, it says, notice shall, this is for a, if we need to hold a special meeting as the select board, notice shall be given to each member and representatives of the press at least 48 hours in advance. I thought we should add when practicable, because sometimes you do need to hold a meeting and you can't give 48 hours notice, and I checked the charter and it doesn't limit us.
Is there a state law or
state
anything that
rule?
requires?
I was gonna say the state.
You can hold an emergency meeting at any point.
That's what I'm sort of,
If it's an
yeah.
emergency, you can say, we hold an emergency meeting, you have to give reasonable notice, but what is reasonable? If it's an emergency, 5 minutes might be too long, it's,
Yeah,
yeah, you have to, and you have to use any practical means you can to reach out to the press and the public to say that you're holding this meeting, but that's your standard.
And we always have to follow state law, I mean, we can say what we want in our bylaws, but we're still subject to state law and we can't. So I just thought when practicable would just reflect that, you know, we're obviously not gonna be holding special meetings on a whim and trying to make sure we don't give,
Was
we'll
there
always
somewhere,
follow this.
was there somewhere else in there that mentioned emergency meetings or?
I didn't see that, I went back to check the charter to see if there was something. That's what sort of struck me, that it didn't allow for any exceptions to the 48 hours, and I thought, well, I know there were a few
We have
times.
another road washout, we may decide to meet.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And to be fair, if you decided this, you know, thought this was all, you came to what you wanted to do on the bylaws, if tomorrow something happens, you can suspend your bylaws at any point by
Yeah.
2/3 vote of your group. So it would take 4 out of the 5 of you to do so, but if, you know, if you all 5 of you said, oh my, half the town's washed out, it wouldn't
gotta
matter what
meet.
this said,
Yeah.
because you all agreed, hey, we gotta do something about this situation, or something, if there was something in conflict. I think the idea of the bylaws really is, through a matter of, you know, the normal course of of activity, this is how you operate, you know?
So I'm fine that we could add something, or if you'd prefer to just leave it as the 48 hours, it sounds like we would have.
If it were me, if I were, I would suggest, I think some adjustment to that would be a good idea. Because
Yeah.
it should address for the fact that you all have the right to do that if something were
So
to
I,
call
I would
out.
just do that, just add when practical or when,
okay,
whatever wording you wanna put.
When
You're the
practical.
legal expert here.
I think that covers us if we go with when practicable. And I can give you these, John, to.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you.
This is a lawyer thing, I don't even know if I have to raise it, but in the first section 1, where we say the charter of the town of Rockport, if we just put town charter with initial caps in parentheses, because it gets referred, it's just such a mouthful.
Over and over and over.
I don't think
Yeah.
we're worried about the chair of another town, the charter of another town either.
Exactly, I know, it just is like,
We're not gonna care about Camden's charter, you know? That's-
and I promise not to, this is me at my worst here. Oh, I know, under section 5, participation in voting, the second paragraph is all about conflict of interest, but the charter actually does a really good job of spelling out what those are. This is very sort of, so I thought where it says, the first sentence of the second paragraph, no member may participate or vote in any matter in which the member has a conflict of interest or other disqualification as defined by law. I would put comma, including the town charter. So that the conflict of interest or the disqualification as defined by law, and I'm saying that by law includes the town charter, because there's a really good detailed requirement there, which I'd want somebody to be looking at that rather than our bylaws to see whether they have a conflict of interest. Then number 7, John, you raised this, we talked about the performance reviews of the town manager. And suggested I think the August 31 is fine for establishing goals.
Yeah.
It's the May 31.
Practical.
It doesn't work. And I can see why you would want that, because you'd get the prior select board doing it rather than the new guys who are gonna evaluate John
Right,
when you just got on board. But I think the July 31 sort of would make sense for the performance review. And then on the heels of that, you can get into the goals, can say, well, we didn't get everything done, or whatever comes up.
So you're saying then
So we
the
might,
performance review will be done by July 31st,
yeah,
and then you have the August 31st for the
for
goal
the
setting.
goals, yeah. What do you
Sounds
guys think of that?
Practical to me.
yeah,
Okay,
that's,
Actually, it's not a bad idea to change it for new, because then the new board members would get to see what the prior board had already talked about
Good thinking.
with the
Good point.
current. So it's actually a better idea, I think, to do it in July,
Mm-hmm.
because then you get to see what we had been talking about for 2 years before you got here. You know,
yeah, that's a good point.
and then you'll understand what he's been doing for that period of time before we get into the new goals. That'll give you a month to think about it. Yeah, so in a way, I think it's actually better. So,
Okay. Great, so we'll change that last line to July 31. Section 8, I would just say town charter on the last line. Instead of charter of the town of Rockport. And then section 9, we say Robert's Rules of Order newly revised. I just say it says the current edition of Robert's Rules of Order, so I just,
yeah,
it'll clean it up is all I'm doing. I'm sorry to take everybody's time with this. And then the third line, applicable law, delete state and federal statutes, including the town charter. So applicable law is applicable, it's state, federal statutes, it's regulations, who knows what all is included.
and town charter.
Yeah, and the town, yeah, I like to include the town charter, and then, any special rules we might adopt. And that's it, and I'll get you the edits, unless anybody has concerns with that. Okay,
Nope.
all right.
So we'll approve those at the next meeting though, right?
Yeah, we'll see it, maybe we'll do a red line of it, and we
Yeah.
can approve
that's the
those.
August meeting.
Yeah, or July 10th.
Oh, July 10th, yeah. I still think,
jumping
I'm
ahead.
already,
Don't make the summer go away, we
You're
haven't
jumping
had.
ahead.
I know,
haven't
school
had-
starts
We haven't
next
had
week,
summer
I
weather
mean.
yet.
Shh.
We did back in
We
May.
had a day, yeah,
One day.
I know. Ooh. Okay, next item, act on select board liaisons. We talked about those at our last meeting and, should I read what my notes were from that, or do
Yeah.
you wanna?
Make sure we're still in agreement.
Yeah, and then maybe people change their minds too, I don't, so I showed that Eric would, take on the Board of Assessment Review. Michael would do, and I'm assuming a lot of these won't change, so like Jim will stay with the, Budget Committee, but Michael, these are the changes, so Michael would become the liaison for the Conservation Commission. Jim would be the liaison for the Recreation Committee, replacing Eric on that. Kim would
Say
be,
that again?
Oh, what was that
wait,
again?
I'm
Which
sorry,
one?
so Recreation Committee,
Taking
so
Eric,
that's one that's not yellow highlighted.
taking Eric
Okay.
off?
Take Eric off
Okay.
and put Jim there.
Yeah, okay.
And then Zoning Board of Appeals, Kim would become the liaison to that. Comprehensive Plan Committee, Michael would be the liaison.
Hold 1 second. So Kim is going to be ZBA?
ZBA, yeah. I'm gonna-
Liaison.
The
Oh,
liaison.
liaison,
Liaison.
okay, okay. I was resigning as a member, okay.
Resigning as a
Okay,
member,
Right.
becoming the liaison.
Okay, that makes sense.
So she,
Comprehensive plan is Michael.
it's Michael, RES Redevelopment Task Force goes away
With the
with a
event that
successful
it
vote.
might become the new committee task force through the Lesher Foundation, right?
I think you probably, I mean, because that task force,
Well, I know, but
because
I'm
it was
just
only for
saying.
that, you probably would wanna create a new one.
There's gonna be a
Right,
new
that's what
one.
I'm saying, we're
Yeah.
gonna roll it in.
It might be the same.
I mean, this is gone, but now there may be another group of people
Another new life.
Yeah.
that'll have to be involved in the development of the park and all
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
That may not be the best thing for me. Only because I won't have the time.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be
Yeah, it's gonna be a busy one, that's all I mean,
yeah.
It is.
to clarify that.
So the task force goes away with the recognition that there will likely be some new form taken in a couple months when they pull together the members. Village Improvement Task Force, we'd add, Kim is also in there, so it's Denise and Kim as liaison, and I think we're both voting members, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Water Resource Advisory Task Force, I show Eric and Michael for that.
Okay.
Right, is that okay with you,
Sure.
Michael?
Yeah.
I mean, it could be one.
No, I wanna be,
Yeah, I know you wanna be on it, Eric, but I don't know if Michael's
Yeah.
feeling like.
I'm
that's why I say I couldn't do the other one
Yeah.
too, with that one and that one.
Yeah.
It would be
A
too
lot.
much for me.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, what I'm asking you, Michael.
I'm happy to be like an alternate, or if that's such a thing.
Okay, so
Or he's taking the lead on it, but I'll
you'll participate or be,
attend as much as I can.
okay, that makes sense. Camden Rockport Pathways Committee, Michael.
That was me.
EMS Ambulance Review Committee, Kim and Jim. You were on
Who's
it.
that?
The
Yeah,
ambulance
EMS.
review, EMS and
Oh, yeah.
Legacy Rockport, we don't need to go through all those.
No, just
And
move-
McCog will be, take me off, Eric is there.
Yeah,
which he has
which I've
been
already
anyway.
talked to them, so I fixed it.
Good,
They
you're
got-
on their
they got
mailing
you.
list and,
Yeah,
You're going this week?
I'll probably have to do it by Zoom.
Okay.
I just don't think I can get there.
I'm gonna ask, what is MCOG?
It's the Mid-Coast Council of Governments. So it used to be the MCED, which was the Mid-Coast Economic Development District.
Okay,
Effectively, it's an organization was established to assist communities from Brunswick, Topsom, all the way up to Waldo County. Predominantly economic development issues, but also planning, they run the gamut of those, and other parts and pockets of the state, those groups are quite strong. For whatever reason, it's never taken hold here on the mid-coast, so this group's really, and they're doing I think they're doing a great job, but it's hard to build momentum with so many small towns like we have in the mid-coast. So they really sort of got their feet under them about 10 years ago, and even now it's sort of just starting to pay off, so.
so like Orion, initially, we used to just contract to get Orion from them, and then we brought him in full-time, so it's sort of that. And they have, is it economic development, you need to work through a McCog to get access to certain federal grants. So it's a big,
Yeah, it's beneficial to be part of.
For sure.
Problem is, every little town has their own exact needs, and it's very difficult to get a consensus based on my last big roundtable meetings.
well, when you think of a Brunswick, you know, in terms of, because they're in it, and they're sort of the big dog in a lot of ways, and it's, and they're very active in it, and they tend to meet down closer to Brunswick than up here, so the meetings, getting to the meetings is tricky.
I'll try to go, but it really just depends on my work schedule this week.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll just listen in on Zoom and do it that way.
So do we need to vote on these liaison appointments, or we just,
No.
I don't think so, we just
I don't
reflect
think you
them.
have to,
Yeah.
as long as we know who's going, who, what, where, when, then
Yep.
we'll
We
update
can
the
get you
list.
that, and we can get the Diane or somebody can
Yep,
update the list.
and then we can, as we mentioned in the department head meeting, we'll reach out and all of our department heads will know, okay, this is who I'm working with on this committee or that committee.
Yeah, and I see on this list the staff liaisons as well.
Make sure we have access to the right SharePoints.
Right, and that's, so, Diane's back, she's working
Yeah.
from home this week, so if there's a backlog of things that perhaps while she was out, I'm sure she'll be
Oh, yeah.
churning through them,
It
but,
doesn't have to happen this week, I'm just,
no, but you know,
yeah.
it's one of those things you can get lost,
Yeah, I know. It's-
so.
I mean, we use it sort of, but not really, and it does help when they're there.
Yeah, absolutely,
So
no,
then there was an agenda item on, we
Yeah,
don't need
we
to vote
have
on it?
it says I move the slate of select board liaisons.
if you want to approve them, but that's totally up to you, if the 5 of you are okay with who's doing what, when, and why, then
We
we
can
can make
vote
that
on
change.
if it's on there.
Okay, we have a
So,
motion to approve,
oops, wrong one.
Kim,
I move the slate of select board liaisons as amended.
Second.
okay, any discussion, all those in favor? Okay, great. Next is to act on a sewer easement amendment for offshore restaurant. John, do you wanna?
Yes, so this is a bit of a funny situation. So in 2021, when the town was going through the process of constructing or putting together the plans for the construction of the Route 1 sewer project, a key piece of that is the pump station, which would be sited at what's the offshore restaurant, formerly the Spinnaker. And it appears there was some miscommunication through that process over the size of the easement. And so there's a construction easement which was broader and bigger so that they had the room to actually build the pump station there. But the idea was that would be extinguished through the end of the construction. Apparently those wires got crossed. And so what's happened now is the offshore is for sale. They have prospective buyers. Or they may have prospective buyers, and this easement is in the way. So their attorneys looked at it, came back to us, went through our sewer plans, and it's clear that somehow red was blue and blue was red, and we cut the wrong wire. So effectively what this does, approving this revised easement will clarify the size of our easement and allow it to really be just that narrow strip from Route 1
Just that red.
down to, yeah,
Along Dearborn Lane,
yeah,
Okay.
yes,
and it does away then with the
the blue,
temporary 30-foot wide temporary construction easement.
bingo,
Okay.
yep.
Okay. Do I have a
Sounds good.
motion? Is there a motion to approve the sewer easement?
I'll make a motion to approve the revised sewer easement
Second.
for the restaurant.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay. That ends our action items, and now we'll move on to discussion items. The first one is the report from the Parks and Beautification, well, it's a joint Parks and Beautification Harbor Committee's meeting, and it's a report from that.
Yep.
Let's see there.
Is this the outcome?
This is the outcome.
This is the outcome, the summary of what was agreed to. And And I think it's just keeping us informed of what's been decided. And if anybody has any comments or discussion related to it. You know, generally, the permitted commercial uses are set up in this document that both sides agreed made sense to sort of allow down in the harbor. Any additional commercial applications would be submitted to each committee for their evaluation. And in general, Parks Committee would take care of everything that's in the park rather than on the water side. And then the Harbor Committee will take care of the floats, kayak tours, schooners, sailings, commercial boatyard activities. So it seems like a good, and I think it was a very, Eric, you were.
Very involved,
Yeah, and I think this is a good summary of it.
but not in the write-up.
I would, so there's a couple things, so I think, right, as you had said, Denise, it's a meeting of the two groups and where they lined up and where they didn't line up. The next piece in this, as I can see, is taking that and putting it into rules that are adopted by the board.
Okay,
We had talked, or I had mentioned at the meeting when we talked about Skyhook. They're incorporating these recommendations into something that's a little bit more, one actually effective in that it's the law that the select board has established as the law of the land down at the marine park.
so someone could find it later and not have to remember that at our June 26, 2023 meeting, we had a letter and it sort of outlined,
Yes.
so it's more
And
official.
codify everything into the official agreement.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, this is sort of, so to back up a little bit further, there's been a consistent difficulty of understanding who's responsible for what in the harbor. There is the Harbor Committee, which is certainly a committee that is meant to provide feedback to the harbor master and the board in terms of setting policy for how to operate and manage the harbor. We have a Parks and Beautification Committee, which is set out to maintain and beautify the parks in the town of Rockport. But we also have a harbor master who is employed by the town and staff who are responsible for the upkeep and maintenance of what's around them. So there's a lot of places where things can get crossed and, I thought this is our responsibility, this is their responsibility. And so this was really I think the first opportunity in 2 years of an opportunity for those groups to sort of sit down and say, okay, well, we really care about this, but this is less something that's on our radar, and then vice versa. And obviously the committees are they're the most vocal about their needs for those issues. The difference though is now the overall is the five of you. The five of you really decide what happens, what the law of the land is. So to codify perhaps what this is, if you feel like it hits the right mark here or not the right mark there. But it was very difficult for the board as they were talking about the sauna situation, for those who remember that debate or dialogue. It was very difficult to do that because there were so many different places that conversation could go. So the nice thing about this is it sort of helps to create a bit of a sandbox for everybody to say, okay, this is sort of the area we're talking and working within, but it doesn't cover everything, I guess is sort of what I'm trying to get across. There's a lot more work I think that can go into this, so that next boating season, and I realize this boating season just started, but it's gonna take a long time, I think, to do this the way to codify it, put it into paper, make sure everybody from the Skyhooks to the Mainly Lobsters to the boat clubs to, the guys going up catching squid, everybody, and to the people who just sit in their lawn chairs eating lunch. How do all these different pieces all play together? And that's a difficult thing, but the beautiful part is a lot of this work is done.
Yeah.
So.
So what would you see as,
So in theory, the way this is written now, the sauna thing, that would fall on a Parks Committee. The way this is,
Right, right.
potentially, I think, cause I thought it says, all commercial permit applications are to be submitted to both the chair of the Parks Committee as well as the chair of the Harbor Committee for their recommendations. So I think the permitted commercial uses for 2023 are those as listed. But after that, I think both Parks and Harbor. I mean, I appreciate what you're saying.
right, it just helps
Yeah, I like.
figure out which bucket it goes into.
It seems like they want to both review to make sure there's nothing that would conflict.
Yeah, one
what
committee
they
might
would
not
say.
think it inflects.
We're doing
the-
it.
To have,
Yeah.
and then have discussion as needed. Yeah.
But it's, you know, and I think there is, so there's also the fact that you have everything, there've been kayak racks there for 30 years, but now there's 4 kayak racks, I think there's 4 in total. You know, there's always been boats in the harbor, now we have more moorings. There's always been parking, but now there's more parking, like, so there's, everything is more, everything is more impacted on each other. You know, it's easy to have neighbors when your next neighbor is 3 miles away. But when they're 15 feet away, it's like, well, okay, hold on, is this what we want? And I think that's sort of what I see here. You know, we have, the other part of this is that there's a process through which the board is asked to approve, what are they called? Licenses effectively for those who are operating businesses in the harbor, okay? So, for example, the Brother Shucker food truck, okay? So they wanna operate in the harbor, they come to you. But we don't currently have it set up that yoga classes and kayak tours and sailing trips, I mean, there's a schooner that has a lease, but my point is that we need to clarify that. We need to make that a bit of a simpler path to accomplish what these recommendations call for, in my mind.
So what is with the kayak tours? I mean,
Yeah.
it's a company, I guess, or
Main
maybe
sport
multiple
runs.
companies that just do and launch from the harbor?
Yeah, Main Sport's the one that I'm familiar with. They used to do a lot of tours, a lot less now. But yeah, they would, you know, they'd bring their vans down with the trailers with all kinds of kayaks and load them in, and they'll take them out in the harbor.
So
yeah.
those do or do not currently get a permit?
Those are permitted, they're permitted uses under this sort of agreement.
Yes. Permitted
But
uses.
they're not, the issue of whether or not they require further permitting from this group isn't spoken to here.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Like a
Yeah,
license,
that piece
Yeah.
of it is
like the
not-
food truck would have a license from the town
Right,
to conduct
Right.
business there.
the sauna needed that approval from the board, and that's sort of how that conversation started, so there's a lot of these that just, we have to clear this up, it's a bit of a mess, I think,
And
and,
we have like the licenses, but then the
Yeah.
leases that the boat
Right.
club and Maine Lobster, we haven't had a role in that, but then Skyhook sort of made us have a role. You know, so we
Right.
should clarify,
right,
if we're gonna do some of it, we should either do all.
So right now, it's kind of hit or miss on who needs to have a license to operate there.
yeah. So, and Ryan and I have talked quite a bit about this, about working with Abby to take this, and try to turn that into policy and rules. The Harbor Committee's been working on rules, they're talking about, so there's sort of, all of these things are happening in different levels. There's also the other part of this, which is the actual layout of the harbor. And we've talked a little bit about these sinkholes, we talked about the sinkholes, I think, the other day, about, we have these sinkholes that occur, so that's an issue, in terms of our infrastructure and upkeep of the facility. Well, a big place that thankfully Skyhook Parks, so they keep repairing where they are. Thank goodness there's no holes there, because they repair it every time they make a rut or what have you. But other sections right along the bulkhead there also see these giant washouts every storm we have. We need to have a better answer for making sure that we're not just throwing more dirt in the same hole over and over and over again. So there's also a part of this, which is, okay, well, where do we want to put things? Do we want Skyhook to be there? Should that be paved? So that way there's no damage to the grass, because there's no grass there. Should we have some sort of boardwalk type, paved concrete, so that way all that sort of builds in. I'm not sort of like, I'm not trying to make this a bigger issue, but I'm saying, I feel all these issues sort of intersect with each other, and it might take some doing, might take some doing to get all these things figured out.
So this is a good starting point, and it sounds,
Start.
John, like you have a plan, working with Orion and Abby to get to those rules and regulations.
That's what we're hoping. And with the committee's help too, I mean,
Yeah,
that's, but eventually it has to come back here, and there may be some things that make more sense from the select board's view of things than say, the committees. There may be
Right.
difference of opinion there, so.
So at this point right now, I mean, what stops another food truck from showing up there and setting up shop or,
We're only allowing the one.
Yeah,
right, but who's policing that? Abby?
yeah.
Plus they'd have to get an actual permit and have to come
That's
to
true.
us to
Yeah.
get it.
That's true.
And the committees have already only said they'll hopefully allow one,
Yeah,
so
that's
it wouldn't get past the committee muster anyway.
Right.
So there are some safeguards already
Yeah.
built into it, so.
and where do they start with a permit? Do they go to the town office?
Yeah,
Is
so
it
right now
Scott?
it's out of code enforcement, and that's sort of I'm not sure that's the best place for that conversation. They'll shot at code enforcement,
No,
but
he's got other things
we,
to.
we have a harbor master who's there, and again, this is where things get crossed.
Yeah.
We have a harbor master who's there, who sees, what's out their front door, and they should be able to say, oh yeah, they are there, they're not there, should be able to manage that calendar. Okay, Brother Shucker's here this day, Bobby from Flatbread's here on the other day, like, there should be on town property, in my opinion, there should be some ability for the town to say, okay, we have one spot, and we're gonna use that one spot, and
It could be 5 different people.
could be 5 different people,
every day
yeah,
different.
we could have a calendar, we could say, oh, it's, this day is whoever, or whatever,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
you can do that.
Yeah, and I do think it does make sense for Abby, because Scott
Mm-hmm.
he's a trained, building inspector. I
Right.
mean, his background and training isn't in what we're talking about here.
Right, absolutely. So, anyway, it's
Okay, so more to come, but
more to
this-
come, but this is the basis, I think, that we're using to start. But I think there's more, I think the Harbor Committee has more thoughts, I know Parks has more thoughts. I think, and I'm sure each of you have your own thoughts, so.
Yeah, and if
Eventually
anybody
it's-
has
needs to
any
come back.
reaction to this, I guess this would be a good time to just get a sense of whether anybody sees any concerns with this sort of general.
I'm just glad we finally got to some point.
Okay, Jim does.
I'm
We
ready.
bought pilings
Yeah,
2 years ago, and they're somewhere stored still.
yeah.
That doesn't help the wall any.
Can't get anybody to put them in.
New pilings, yelling.
That's been the challenge on that one. Haven't been able to get them to come in, to put them in.
Is Proc who does that?
Can't get any date.
We were on their schedule, well, part of it was FEMA. So FEMA they didn't approve the money for this until February. So by that point, people had already got their calendars done for the rest of the year. Now, they had made verbal assurances to Abby that they could get the pilings in, not just this spring, but even after we put the floats in, because we had to put the floats in, because it's sort of like, at some point, the weather's such, people wanna get out there. But we're sitting here, June 26th, and still don't have the pilings in, paid for them, ready to go. Contractor's gotta do the job, Proc did talk to Proc about having them come in. But also, you have FEMA, you also have, Proc would have been fine, but you also have to ensure that that FEMA approves of who you got the quote to do the project. These, FEMA made us have them submit 3 or 4 different quotes because they didn't like the way it was worded. So she kept having to go back and give it more, and and these guys are not,
This isn't.
that's not what they're into it for, but.
Install piling.
Right, right,
How much more information do you need?
It was, yeah,
More
so
money.
it got caught up in that, but I would hope, you know, again, busy as it is, I can't imagine it's gonna get done now.
Yeah.
But, you know, we were late getting, they were the same crew, late getting some of the channel markers out too. You know, we had them painted, but nobody to get them out there and put them in, so.
Why can't we put them in?
I don't know the answer, why we can't put them in, but we don't. I know we put some signage up
I think we
ourselves,
used
like
to.
the no wake signage and all that, but,
I know we used to,
did you? Yeah.
Well,
and signs and throw rings. There's no throw rings down there. If somebody's drowning,
I saw that we got ladders, good ladders.
well, they just got the ladder, but if you can't get the ladder,
Yeah, I
She's
thought
ordered throw
I thought she mentioned that there was
Yeah.
some new coming or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
She ordered them, but I don't know when they're coming. Yeah, but the
Okay.
ladders were an issue.
Yeah,
Are the piling something we can plan for the fall and just make sure Proc gets out the schedule? Is that a logical kind of thing?
Too logical. Yeah, I mean, it should have been in by now, you know, I mean, by that note, I mean, we've been on the list since, we're March, April to have it put in, and so it's,
is there
go to a
anything,
different contractor, I mean, we're sort of in this world still of COVID where people have too much work, so they're not,
yeah,
incentivized necessarily. And I guess if you make them do their quote 4 times, they're not eager to come back to you. I'm not sure, you know, or we aren't paying as much as private.
Yeah, obviously you want somebody who does a perfect job.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
And
you
is there
don't
any-
And Proc is very good.
other than wanting them in place, are things deteriorating or getting, yeah,
Yeah, it's a problem.
So
No,
they really-
Jim's absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's causing an issue. I mean, there are some points where, because the ones that are deteriorating are making it worse, there's points where because it's not there, it's deteriorating. But there's also the fact that, you know, there's a safety issue of, when you're in the parking
Yeah.
lot, those pilings should be there.
used to keep you from driving over the edge.
Right,
Yeah.
you
exactly,
lean up against one and all of a sudden it goes overboard.
Yeah.
yeah,
Guess who's responsible?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, I couldn't believe it. I was down there the other day, I was checking out my son's boat anyway. There was you know that, mooring we get up in front of that mooring, whatever it is, out in front of the office. A great big, huge bell.
Oh, the big buoy on the land, yeah.
There had to be a kid climbing on that who was well, I know he's unsupervised.
Mm-hmm.
My guess at how old he was probably 3 or 4,
Oh my gosh, and no adult around?
and not adult inside. I'm thinking now, how's this gonna work?
Well, not to mention the parking lot, I mean.
Well, I mean, there's no science, there's no climbing.
Oh.
You know?
Is that the rule, no climbing?
Well, it ought to be. You can't fix stupid.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, I mean, I know the locomotive, you know, when
Well,
that was,
we had to sign that,
well, it
because
used,
people were climbing on it.
yeah,
Well, I guess I'm looking at the whole thing as a safety issue down there. Well, you either have safety or you don't. It's one or the other.
So if a sign was put up, just warning them, no climbing
Yeah.
on this, that would help the town's
So we
liability.
need to do
Well, I mean,
like,
I don't know,
reduce
what's
liability.
everybody else think about that?
we
Yeah.
need to do
Well-
like they do at the other parks and stick those stakes in with little chains that say do not climb or something.
well, yeah, and I guess it depends on, this might be a question to ask our lawyers.
In the
Sometimes if
playground.
you start to do a little bit about safety and you don't go all the way, you're almost worse off.
Mhm.
Because those kids are jumping off at high tide most of the time. Now and again, I think it's closer to low tide, and, the minute we start trying to, and I just suggest that maybe our lawyers could advise us on that, if that's,
no, it's,
because I've watched the kids climb, and I haven't seen one that young, so that is
I couldn't
worrisome.
believe it.
But,
Of course, he's not gonna be able to read the sign, but at least,
No.
right, and the bigger problem there is you have a 3 or 4-year-old without any adult supervision in the
right,
parking lot.
that's another issue.
pictographs, maybe, X, climb.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. but I could read by the age of 2, so, you know, they should be able to read by 3 or 4.
That's our Eric.
One thing, it's not this point, but we did have a situation, where we had somebody who fell into the water, off the dock a few weeks ago. And, you know, it's a challenge because, you know, it's, you wanna make things as safe as you can, right? And there's sort of a level, and what that is, what an attorney might say, what, you know, all 6 of all of us here might say might be different, but there's a level that seems, okay, that seems reasonable to have that, you know, that should be whatever the bar is. But there is that part of all of that comes out of being in a harbor, that there's danger.
It's an inherent risk.
Right, yeah, I mean, part of the reason you go sailing, or you go in the boat, or you go, you know, for, at least at pleasure, not for commercial, but for pleasure at least, is that there's a danger, there's a danger on the road, there's a danger in all these places, and so there is, in that situation, there's a lot of concern, and that's why those ladders were purchased, because somebody went in, they couldn't have gotten out. The problem is that, you know, that because someone goes in, or because we have ladders, doesn't necessarily mean that everyone should be able to be down there.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, you know what I mean? And that's the hard part about what's that balance of, you know, like, there's a legal aspect, and maybe that's the bar that, you know, the town has to say, okay, that's what it is. But you can't take all risk out, right? And that's, so how, when you're managing a harbor, there's that balance, and I don't know what the answer is, but, you know, for those folks that, they had concerns, and they were rightly placed, you know, yeah, we could put, you know, better ladders in, the ladders we had on there were 25 years old. Yeah, they're a little bit longer, put them in, you know, and you can hopefully pull yourself up, but if you're 80 plus, maybe, and you've been in the water for 10 minutes, and it's cold, I don't go in that harbor, it's too cold for me. It's a challenge for us to find, there's a safety to it, and we'll do whatever we can to make sure people are safe, but how do you balance those things out?
Yep.
You know, I mean, I was down there, I never climbed that buoy, because my mother would have she would have beaten, she would have said, nope, you know, but you know, kids have climbed the Vulcan, you know, and I've always thought signage made sense, to say, hey, come on, you know, it's not here versus Jungle Gym. Go to Walker Park, we got a whole thing there, and you can love it, but anyway, that's just my 2 cents of it.
Used to play on the lime kilns,
Yeah,
look down through the grates.
Yep.
Yeah.
slide down the hill, right, over by Walker Park, I mean, that's a lot of fun right there. It's on private property now, but, yeah, it's.
There's more rocks sticking out now too.
Yeah. We've worn it down
Throw it away.
last week,
Well, so I guess how do we proceed on that? I mean, we could one-off say, let's put a sign up saying no climbing on the buoy, or just sort of have you sort of evaluate those issues with.
As far as the whole overall picture, is there like a set of standards that are generally accepted on the coast of Maine for public access harbors for certain safety things?
Well, Maine Municipal is we're in the lost pool, so anyone who's part of that, they share all responsibilities and claims and so forth. On top of that, that lost pool, and membership in that means that there's the Maine Tort Claims Act. So the Maine Tort Claims Act, I'm not a lawyer, I'm playing one on YouTube apparently right now, but basically there are specific provisions that allow towns specifically who are in that pool immunity, okay? So the pothole statute is a perfect example of that. If there is, you know, we went down the street, well, actually this is a bad example, Russell Ave, if you were on your way home, okay, and you blew out a tire and had this huge, you know, problem, if the town was not made aware of that damage at least 24 hours before that happened,
The road damage.
the road damage, there's no liability to the town, even though it's, you know, obviously damage to your car, the town isn't held liable for it. So in that same sort of mindset, if you're aware of a damage or something that is precarious, particularly precarious in nature, and you're made aware of it, and you don't address it, then you wear that responsibility.
Yeah.
So when all town facilities through the loss prevention, they go around and they review town facilities. Now, they're looking more at, you know, outlets with wires sticking out and sparking, or, you know, they're, you know, ergonomics. But all of those facilities that are covered within that are part of that. So if there are claims, if something were to have occurred, either for a personal nature or from property, they're looking at all that and they're covering all our claims, assuming we're meeting those needs, right?
And I'm not worried, well, I'm not addressing specifically legal aspects.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, like, when a restaurant opens, there are certain requirements to have exit signs and
Yep.
different things like that. And, you know, are there any standards that the insurance company maybe
Right.
would say, like, you know, on your docks, have a throw ring X number of feet, or
Yeah,
if there's anything like that, we could review, or the
Yep.
harbor committee could review, just to
Yep.
see if
yeah,
there's anything we're overlooking, or
yep. No, that's a good idea. Yeah,
just standard
right.
practice
Right.
kind of stuff.
The safety of the harbor,
Yeah.
it's a real situation, right? That's the, you know, it's real.
Yeah.
And you have people down there who maybe are not adept swimmers, or are not,
Right.
you have all kinds of people use that space.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Right? We have bus tours, and we have people who are elderly who are getting off the bus, and, you know, there's a lot of things that can happen in those situations, you know, so.
Go to Acadia National Park, Thunder Hole.
Yeah.
People are,
Right,
don't stay within the
Yeah,
the
Yeah.
fence, you know,
Right,
or the
good point.
railing.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And wet and slip
Yeah.
and fall.
Oh,
and-
yeah.
Yeah.
So like Jim said, you can't
Fix
fix
stupid.
stupid, right?
It's stupid. Yeah, there you go.
okay.
So we don't need to act on this?
I don't think we have anything to act on. It's a discussion item and we just,
I think it's a great start.
yeah, great
Yeah.
start. And John, you guys will start, take it to the next level in terms
And that
of
was just
beginning
the
draft
first
rules
of
and
the three on
regulations.
that, right? On the
Yes.
list. Okay.
Yeah.
So moving right along.
One.
Workforce, affordable housing. And I asked to put this on the agenda because I felt like what we heard during the RES vote was there's quite a lot of concern in Rockport that we really don't have housing for our teachers, our nurses, our employees, our workers. And to the point where people were willing to vote against something that really was one of the best things to happen to Rockport in a long time. So that just shows the passion and the concern people have. And even though I don't have a specific idea of how the select board could fix the problem, I thought perhaps we could, I mean, some of my ideas, but I'd be interested in yours, is maybe have a workshop where we invite the various people who are working on housing issues in the area. There's Habitat for Humanity, there's Knox County Coalition for the Homeless, our own Economic Development Committee is working on this. Mid-Coast Regional Housing Trust is working on it, and bring them together to try to understand who's working on what. Maybe they haven't necessarily all been talking to each other. I've had several people say, I've got land, I might be willing to donate. And my sense has been that land is not the issue, it's the cost of construction, but that's what we would listen to this group, these various people, and just have a workshop format so that our residents would feel like we're at least looking into the issue and looking at what our opportunities might be as a town to try to work on.
Yeah, and I would think including, only because she spoke of it herself, Linda Lesher, at one of the park meetings, she mentioned that is an issue that their foundation is looking into and wants to be involved with.
Absolutely, yeah, so the Lesher
So
Family
that-
Foundation, we would invite
Yeah, I mean,
to.
we're so
yeah.
thankful for what she's just
Yeah.
done, you know, but.
But
to
affordable
get,
housing is
you
part
know,
of their
any
mission
groups
as
like-
well.
Like that foundation and others
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
participate.
and if others know of other groups and, to sort of see how we might structure that kind of workshop to,
Yeah, I bet Stephanie at Knox County Homeless Coalition would have a wealth of information,
Mm-hmm,
because I think she was a state representative, well, in that
so she
issue,
might have
she
that
was
sort of big
appointed,
picture view.
she was appointed by the governor, I think, at one point, so she'd have a good broad view, I would think.
I talked to John Goss in a social setting, and, you know, I could have been there for, he's got a lot of thoughts on this and a lot of information, and he's, president of the Mid-Coast, Regional Housing Trust,
Oh.
which is, sort of was a Rotary spin-off. Rotary took that on as an issue and then sort of created this Mid-Coast Regional Housing Trust. The Camden Rotary?
I don't remember it, but,
Yeah, Joan Falk.
okay.
It was sort of, I think, at a point, I guess she thought, okay, Rotary can't just do this. We need to get the people who wanna work on this and sort of set it off as its own entity.
Fully agree.
Okay, and then and I, you know, I think the reason I wanted on tonight's agenda is just to get it moving, you know, in terms of timing and all of that. So John, maybe a little background on workshops and what our options might be with that?
Yeah, so there is, and I think I might have mentioned this in the discussion items. Usually the workshop format is really an opportunity for the board to just handle a particular topic, or maybe a couple topics. Often they are very specific in nature. While they are open to the public, there aren't minutes, there are no votes. It's merely an opportunity to work on an issue, you know? So a workshop format to invite a roundtable of individuals who are sort of associated seems like the right approach. Usually those have been scheduled in the past. I mean, this is a little bit different because you're bringing in so many different people, but if they're kind of focused in nature, right before your meetings, you know, at 5 o'clock or the 6 o'clock regular meeting time, or maybe even using that fourth Monday of the month to pull together a group. So that's another idea. The other, but where I was sort of going with that is there's, and I don't know what the plan is necessarily, but usually there's a goal session that is held at the July meeting as a workshop format to sort of say, okay, what do we want to accomplish? What do you want me to accomplish? We just changed the bylaws, so, you know, that may be different, but how do are there goals that the board wants to accomplish? I mean, that's one thing that we talked a little bit about last year, and there are, in the budget, there's these sort of measurable goals of like, what are the goals you want to accomplish? And, you know, that way people can see that their budgets, like there's value, like, oh, we've you know, we built 18 widgets, and last year we built 16, so we're doing better, you know, those performance measures, basically. So usually for the last 2 years, all the goals that has been created for that goal session have really been goals that have been sort of targeted towards the manager. But I think that doesn't really allow you, the five of you, to sort of set that policy vision. You know, it's not about necessarily me making sure I've written a page and say, here you go. What do the five of you want to accomplish? What is, you know, what did you run for? What do you want to do? And have the town, you know, lead on. So I think that's my recommendation to the five of you would be, yes, have goals for me, because that's part of your process, but create goals for yourselves. So that, you know, for your group to say, hey, we're gonna work on this, we're gonna work on affordable housing, we're gonna work on, you know, maybe it's, you know, MIDC, how are we gonna, you know, build that closer? How are we going to, you know, EMS, how are we gonna, there are issues that are beyond just what I do. These are some big, big
Right,
ticket
you can
things that
help
we're talking
facilitate
about.
that and show us the way.
Right, I'm here to
and Give us
support.
staff support for, you know.
Exactly. My job is to support what you want to accomplish. It's not, so, it's kind of weird to make that my goal, because it's really, that's what I'm supposed to do. So, you know, this is just one of those. I think the charter could be also that same idea, that you may want to have a workshop just talking about different ideas on the charter, you know? So,
Yeah.
anyway, but because some of that requires, and like, for example, the charter, there's a time, I don't mean to mix these, but there's a timetable on that, where we
Right.
have to have those things going for November, and that has to really get done in the summer to hit November. So there's a reason why you have to jump ahead of that goals process.
Yeah.
And
With the
certainly,
housing, I guess I was thinking a workshop to educate us, understand this, and then potentially a task force of some citizens who are particularly passionate about this, and let them take it to the next level, you know, reporting back to us, but.
Well, I mean, I did share with you what Bangor's doing. You do know that, right? Bangor's approved a whole bunch of tiny houses. They're like 400 square feet that they're getting built to help. They're like one bedroom studios, and some of them are a little bigger with like a second bedroom loft. But I don't know what our ordinance is for the minimum house size here, but I mean,
The ORC has sort of been standing in the wings, waiting for recommendations on, you know, not that we could necessarily get anything passed, but I think we haven't made changes to our zoning code, that it's recognized that that is a limiting factor, but that we will
right.
want to.
But then again, I mean, if you look at what's that one over on West Street, that guy put that Point Lookout cabin in there, that's only like 488 square feet. I don't even know if that's within our code limits.
It's for sale.
345,000.
I saw that.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I looked at that and I'm like, I don't think that falls within our code limits.
Oh, for minimum square
Minimum
footage?
house.
Yeah, I think it's under. I thought 500 and something was our limits. So that concerns me a bit. I mean, I don't want to not let him sell his property, but
You know, have to.
we really need to look at this, because there are people that are willing to live in that size property.
oh, yeah.
That's
And-
actually, I mean, and that's a great cabin.
Yeah,
Right.
You know,
yeah, you can
I've
be
stayed
very
in one of the
comfortable.
Point Lookout
Right,
cabins, they're
and there's
great.
nothing wrong with it. I mean,
No.
you
Put it in your car.
you
And
put
that's
a,
what I
right,
say, if
right.
you're living in your car, this looks
So-
kind of sweet.
I don't, if you haven't seen it, they've been talking about it for a while. They've been past it a few months ago. They started construction on it up in Bangor, through 3 or 4 weeks ago, maybe a month ago. It was in the Bangor Daily News. But I can send you the article. I have it
Okay.
open on my screen.
There was a mobile home park there, right?
Yeah, I
They're
think
converting-
so.
Converting that or what?
Yeah, and they're literally just building little houses. And that's not a bad starter way for people that, you know, because if you go on Facebook on Midcoast group, there's tons of people. I'm losing my apartment, they're selling the building, and sometimes it's 1 or 2 people. That would be perfect for 1 or 2 people that don't have anywhere else to go, that could either rent or maybe even run them through a rent-to-own kind of a situation. I don't know, but I think that's something that we need to add to this
Right.
topic. It's
Right.
not just, you know, my vision is like, let's throw up a bunch of 3-story apartment buildings because the only way to make it affordable is to dense it. It's gotta be like a building here and a building there and a building right there, and they all gotta be 3 or 4 stories tall, and it's the only way you're gonna be able to put up a building that's affordable. Cause you gotta drive the cost down by making it tight.
Right.
But on the other hand, if you could build a bunch of little cabins for 80,000 a pop or whatever, I mean, it's still a lot of money, but that's about what it would cost. You know,
That's what will be interesting to hear from these other people who've been,
yeah.
you know, what do they know if anything about Bangor, or
Yeah.
what would they?
So, I mean, these are all good topics, and we need to bring it up, you know, because, yeah, there was the whole conversation, but at the same time, you know, I've been trying to get, you know, keep bugging you about that DOT lot, and I still think that's something we should push it up. We should go to the representatives or the governor and say, look, this is on your agenda. I mean, they have agendas for getting workforce housing, and they're putting money aside just for those purposes. You've got the perfect lot. You've taken our lot, which is perfect for this development type, you know?
Yeah, so at that workshop, I mean, there can be that sort of back and forth, you can throw those ideas out and they can say, oh, yeah, great, or, oh, we've thought, anyway, whatever
Yeah,
the response
so-
gets the people who are really down in the weeds on this.
So that's, you know, that's where we are. It's either that or we build 3D buildings. I mean, the 3D printed buildings, except they're so ugly.
Well, so we would maybe I mean, really, I could see just finding the right time when everybody could attend.
Yeah, that's the
like-
tough part.
I don't think an hour before a meeting is
Oh,
enough
no,
time to
this'll
really
take-
deal with this, it would really need to be, it's,
It's the starting one, will be quite a bit bigger,
Yeah.
longer. Yeah.
I also should add before you conclude this conversation, and I mentioned it, I think at the department head meeting, I'm not sure I put it in my report, but the legislature agreed to delay.
LD 2003.
Yes, so
We knew that.
there were things that were going to require us to make some changes in terms of affordable housing and our ordinances in kind. We jumped ahead and got those done as soon as the rulemaking was completed, but that rulemaking will continue or reopen, but from what I understand, they're gonna come back right to where they were. So we're ahead of the game in part on
Right, and we
that.
don't have to do anything till next June now?
Yeah.
As a
Yeah.
charter town?
Yeah, but that then means, but we also had to work quickly, so we also have some time now to perhaps re-examine.
Mm-hmm,
Also, we're in the middle of comp plan, also, so
yeah,
there's a lot of things, and the other thing I just wanna quickly say, part of the issue, I think, with the RES affordable housing conversation a year ago, was the town really hasn't had an affordable housing conversation. The
Right.
town has not really, Eric, you've figured that out, right? I mean, density, cost, how do you make that go?
Yeah.
How can anyone afford this? There's a lot of people who haven't really gotten there yet. It's just not on their radar for whatever reason.
Yeah.
There's so many people who can't afford to work here, live and work here.
Yep.
And if we can't, there are those in GA we're helping, and they're going from, one hotel to another. And that's what we're funding that through our general assistance program.
And that-
Yes, we're getting reimbursed by the state, but
Yeah.
it's our program that's doing that.
But that's where some of that tinier housing
It could.
might help
Yes,
alleviate some of that pressure, and
Yes.
that might be something that Maine Homeless Coalition, Knox
Mhm.
County Homeless
Mhm.
Coalition might be willing to.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, they've got the money, so,
they didn't get to
They're
spend it
working
on
on
it.
Thing.
it, the one
Um,
over Rockland.
so.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a project that they'd be willing to take on, since it's too expensive to change Madeline Lane over,
plus but there is a stream, the needs, right? There's the needs of the two-income family that can't even afford to buy a house in
No, right.
Rockport, right?
Mhm.
There's the folks who are starting out and literally they're folks who are getting out of prison and they don't have a place to go. They're in Rockport. Where do they go?
Yeah.
That's a wide swath of town, of who we are. And, it probably isn't gonna take one
Oh.
swing of the bat that's gonna
beginning of
solve
a
it.
conversation.
But we
I
have to,
think.
right,
And it's,
and what can we do on all of those worlds?
Right.
That's what I think that can do,
I
right?
mean, it's not an us conversation anyway, it's a nation conversation.
Right.
It really is, but,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
but,
True. Yeah.
even, I was reading something today, even Portugal's running into an issue with housing shortages. So, and, I mean, as another aside, you might wanna write down, I don't know if everybody's ever looked at it, but there's a company called Boxable. It's BOXBLE or ABLE, something like that. They actually manufacture container style looking houses and they unfold. They literally ship them to you in a box and it unfolds and they're stackable and expandable. And if it would work in our environment,
Yeah,
that's an easy solution if they're not over expensive, because then you can literally just go, oh, we need to build stuff, boom, 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 just drop them in. They're opening a second factory pretty soon here. Their demand is so high, they're
Here,
getting ready to
you
open.
mean,
No, in the United,
US.
yeah, they're in the US, it's a US company, they have a full-time factory and they're just opening their second factory. So, and there's another
Well, I
one
know who's
too.
gonna be the liaison to the task force. once we get there.
There's another one too, begins with a D, like Dalek or something.
Yeah, there's a
that-
lot of innovative things going on.
That does those, and they're more of they do a similar thing, but a geodome style that is more energy efficient. So it's more of a self-sufficient home.
Even
This is
IKEA's
cool.
doing it too,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So
it's a big-
there are a lot of options coming up, and it's just a matter of whether it would work in, you know, what's the
Right.
environments that
Yeah.
those kind of
Mhm.
pop-up houses can fit into, and that might be our solution, you
Mhm.
know, if
Or
it can
one of
work.
many, I mean, I
Yeah,
think it's
one
a
of
whole-
part, right,
yeah.
it may be a very good immediate solution that we could be looking at.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously, the town isn't doing the investment, but, you know, as a
Mhm.
potential possibility that maybe some of these organizations that have money could be viewing,
yeah,
like, you know, Habitat for Humanity, why build a house if you can just order one and we'll go, boop, boop, here's your house.
yeah, we were talking the other day
I
about
mean, you
the
can't
sewers.
find builders, so,
Problem is it costs you $200,000 for a lot to set it on.
yeah, right, I know that's the
Well, we
problem
actually
too.
do have people, who knows what happens when you're actually ready for them to just sign the deed over, and they
Mhm.
said, I've got some land, I'd be willing to donate it.
Really?
Well, the other, and not to bring up a
Sewer
four-letter
department.
word, yes,
Yes.
I mean, that's
What did
the
you say, Mike?
Sewer department.
Yeah,
I mean,
Has to be
again,
I
close
know, it's
enough,
all
yeah.
related.
density in another
Oh,
way,
I know.
right, is that you have to be able to be connected to the sewer, and
Yep.
so Mid-Coast Housing Coalition, out my back door, you know, at the hospitality house, they had a plan at one point to have 13 tiny homes
Yeah.
right back there. The problem was, one, there was no bathrooms in them, so they had like a central place where people had to go, and of course, that would have its own septic, but it's its own leach field, and it's sort of,
Right,
that's a
Becomes an issue.
challenge, right? And if you don't have places you can just plug into the pipe and have it go to the sewer department,
Yeah.
now we all know that's a whole, that's a whole other
That is-
thing we're into, but,
We'll never take that for granted again.
right, exactly, yeah. But just talking about just that part, that's, you know, I mean, whether it's a DOT site or it's, you know, other places in town where people, you know, could have us hook up, I mean, that shouldn't be lost on.
Yeah, if we're going
Hopefully
for
that
density.
conversation,
right.
and affordable housing is part of the sewer conversation, and Route 90 expansion is part of that too.
Yeah, I mean, that's something a lot of people, I don't know if they realize that the only way you can get to
Yeah.
the density requires utility hookups.
Mhm.
It's nice to say, oh, let's build 80 or 100 units or whatever, but we don't have any land to put 80 or 100 units on anywhere on Route 1. I've scanned that up and down the map, and in my head, there's not a piece of land big enough.
Mhm.
I mean, if you could blow out the old Denny's, I don't know what's going on there. You could probably stick in about 60 units there, I think, in a U-shaped building. But,
So for timing, I mean, great ideas and all of that,
yeah, I don't spend any time thinking about this topic.
right. Thinking of like, that fourth Monday makes some sense to me as at least a starting point for us. We'd obviously, I don't know if it's an email out to these people who we know are part of this to start looking at availability. You know, I'd be happy to make some phone calls to the folks I know involved in that, but I sort of wanna, if that's okay with people, I'd be.
Yeah, do you wanna start, would you wanna look at the end of July, is that,
Why not? If
Does
that
that
works for
wanna
our
start?
group, I don't know how you guys are.
Yeah, let's throw it out there and see if we get any response back.
Yeah,
what would be your
and then you
fourth,
start from there and
your
then,
fourth Monday or whatever that might be?
yeah, that would be
Is that for-
The
July
24th?
24th. There's actually a fifth Monday,
Oh, hey,
Yeah, July 10th.
quite a lot of Mondays in July.
Yeah, if we can get any response back, or if any of these other groups are having a meeting that we can drop into at some point, it wouldn't hurt, you know?
Yeah,
I mean, it kinda, you know, Knox County Homeless Coalition does their own thing, and a lot of them live right here.
yeah,
But yet
everybody's
they-
actually,
But they don't,
we have a lot
you
of
know,
Rockport,
there's
you
no
know.
feedback from them on what they're really working on.
But it would start it'd start the
Yeah.
dialogue that we haven't really had, cause we haven't,
So,
been an issue, been
okay.
focused on for us. Okay, so start with July 24th, which would be our fourth Monday, and we can try over the next couple days to see if that would be, and 6 o'clock, I think, is a good time for
Yeah, I
everybody.
can't do anything before then,
Okay.
as you can tell. It's really hard for me to do before 6.
So send out as an invite to the
Yeah,
different groups. We're
Yeah.
having a meeting on the 24th, a workshop on the 24th.
Good.
great, okay.
Next.
Next, charter updates.
So, in this case,
Go for it, Eric. No, go for it.
in this case, I wanted to see if we can incorporate all those really annoying little questions at the end of the ballot and get them just stuck in the charter. I think there's only there's like one, I think that we can't, the one with the tax dates and percentages, that one I think we could not, because that changes every year. But I think the bulk of those 11 through 29 million that we have to all just vote yes on, and because you don't care, and
Yeah.
I mean, it's just standard stuff. Can we accept gifts? Okay.
Yeah.
I wanna get those incorporated as one of the major issues so that we can, one, shrink the ballot, which in turn saves money because we're not spending the money printing
That's
excess pages that mean, that are just repetitive, and everybody every year asks, why do we have to do this every year?
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I get asked that. Why do we have to vote on these same questions every single year?
Yeah.
'Cause that's the way it is. But does it really have to be that way is the question.
No.
So then, that's my main thrust in this point.
Perfect.
There's a couple other things I'd like to clarify, you know, the town manager duties is a little bit muddy. And I just wanna make sure we have the right separation of powers between select board and town manager and clean up some of the language just looks a little, to me, it looks a little muddy and a little confusing, so. I'm sure there might be some other things we might need to clarify, but I think it hasn't been reviewed in 6 years, so I just think it's time to make sure we're up to date with the current laws and
Right.
get rid of all that extra page and a half of questions that nobody likes to circle yes to 100 times, right?
I was struck by, just looking at it all, that the difference in the description of what we're looking for in a town manager versus the assessor. You can tell Carrie was on the Charter Review Commission, because the assessor has got all these qualifications and only Carrie meets those. And then the town manager just says, we want somebody who's got good experience, good at what they do.
Yeah, it's just,
Somebody we know would.
yeah, it's just, there's just not enough, yeah, it's just a little, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like it's there, you know?
Yeah.
What's the process for tackling that type of review and rewrite?
Well, there's two ways you can change a charter. One is you have a charter commission and you could soup to nuts change everything about how you operate. That isn't really what Eric's talking about. That's not where we are. So those are simply, board agrees it's a good idea and you put it on the ballot.
Who does the writing?
That's it. Probably me, but then you all would look at it and you'd say, well, use this word instead of that word, or move things around.
Yeah.
That's, I'd get probably the first crack at it, and then once you're happy with it, that's what you vote on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think we're, at this point anyway, talking about like a fundamental change in how we
No,
operate, we're just
So
cleaning
then
it
you
up.
would do the rough draft, basically, or first draft
Yep,
of potential revisions.
right.
And get that ready for the November ballot, which would be,
Yeah, which means that
here,
next
but-
June, everybody wouldn't have to hopefully sign,
Right.
yes.
Right, cramp. Hold on, ice. All right, next. Yeah,
I don't know, it would just be nice to get rid of those, and, I mean, it does save money in the long run,
It
because
does.
we're not printing that extra page.
yeah, absolutely.
And it shortens people's time standing in the ballot box, and they can vote on what's important.
They'll be happier and more willing to vote next time.
yeah, if the ballot's not so daunting,
Yeah.
even though it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you want to how do you want to handle that discussion? Do you want to put it on an agenda as an action, or do you want to have a quicker workshop and sort of go through?
Yeah,
What do you think?
I was thinking if, give everybody some time to read through, see if there's any
See other
changes,
stuff
kinda
that
do the same
people-
thing we did with the bylaws tonight.
Yeah,
but,
okay.
But those are my thrusts, is just clean up
I love
your
that.
duties, our duties, and those questions.
Yep.
And, I
There
mean, I'm sure there's
also-
other stuff in there, because I didn't really read through every little part, I kind of focused on those three major issues, you know, I haven't read it fully lately, so.
When we had the situation where Bill Post resigned and we had to, look for a new town manager, and we had the select board had just gone through the process of evaluating the applicants. The process here is for,
Yeah, that was a little
it
odd,
didn't give us an easy way to say,
Yeah.
we just did this was our second choice, let's do it.
yeah, I did notice that.
So that's a thought in terms of,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we can streamline that process a little bit, particularly if you're within, you know, a year or two of having gone through the process, so you're not having to start all over. So you think maybe like a workshop, a short, this would be like a pre-meeting
Yeah.
workshop.
Yeah, I
where
think
we just
we could start
get
at
everybody's
5:30 one day or
ideas.
something and just.
Everybody goes through their list.
Yeah,
I got 2, I got 5, I got.
yeah, well, you got mine.
Yeah.
Those are mine, I mean, I'll go through and write out my notes, but,
Yeah,
That'd be great.
yeah,
That'd be,
that's why I,
Before what meeting, like,
Yeah,
not the
when-
next one, right?
July 10th, would that be pushing it to do something?
well, we have to do it by August, so that we can
Oh,
write it for
okay.
September, so
Okay.
we either do it in July.
I
or
don't
we
think
just
it's
do it
gonna
in
be time
August.
consuming, really, it's.
I don't either, I'm not
mean-
trying to make this a complicated issue.
No, I
just-
think you
I
raise a
want it
good
to be
point, and-
just,
yeah.
let's clean it up a little bit and fix
Yeah.
the.
Yeah,
fix
and
those
maybe we'll
bugs.
end up deciding we're not gonna do everything we might want, but let's just
Yeah.
get some of the easy stuff done, and,
So one thing that escaped my memory, but you all remember, we had to have that special town meeting for the easement, for the utility
Yeah, right.
easement down here. So
Maybe we could do
somehow we
something
didn't
in
get,
that.
yeah, we didn't end up getting that on the agenda, on the warrant. So that will have to come back, and that would be one of those items that I would suggest that would be
Add it to our
included.
duty
would be
of
included
party
in
of,
the,
yeah, our
Right,
good
powers
idea.
of whatever, my brain has gone dead.
Mhm.
exactly, yes.
Into there, so that we
Yes.
don't have to do
Yes.
those funky things with
Right.
a power box, which really didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
As to why we had to do
Why
that.
that was our unique
Yeah,
ability to, knowing nothing about what we're
alright,
voting on. Okay, so is that doable, John, to do like a 5, I don't know if that works for people on
Yeah,
timing,
it's a little
July
tough, but I
10th
can
at
manage.
5:30?
I just have to remember.
You say maybe 5:30 instead of 6?
5:30 instead of 6.
On July 10th.
And if you, can people just let you know, would the idea be that we try to, I guess we'll just talk then, and then we'll come up with a draft for the next.
Yeah, and then we'd have the draft for the August meeting that we can approve, and then
Okay,
we would write, then from that draft, we would say
Yep.
the following changes, yes or no,
Yep.
and put them on there. I think they'd have to be split up a little bit, but,
Probably.
yeah.
yeah, I think it
Probably,
has to
yeah.
be by subject or something, so you
Yeah.
don't more put
It'd
too
be
much
easy to
together.
do,
Yeah,
yeah.
so it might be a long ballot then, but then it'll
Yeah,
get shorter.
But we would, yeah, we'd do the long ballot, we'd have a longer ballot in November covering these points, but then from then on,
Right.
Never again,
you know, nobody will have to sit there and do that.
okay,
Pain is over.
I'm surprised nobody's ever talked about it before.
well, weren't some of those done in the town meeting
Yeah.
format, so we didn't have a whole printed ballot?
Yeah, but it's,
No, I totally am.
but
on
even
board.
then, it's like,
Yeah, I know.
a waste of time.
That was
Alright.
one of the 5 million things we had to raise our hands for, right?
Right,
Yeah,
Exactly.
That nobody
Little
was really
card.
listening to.
Yep, yep.
yep, the drama's over, okay.
True.
Select board liaison reports.
No.
Eric, you completed your task, so well done. You got to close your committee out with the various task force. I've got a few, but
I don't have any.
not yet. You'll be like taking up half the meeting once you get to. all the-
Yeah.
both of them. Yeah.
I'll have very detailed handouts for everybody.
I want a
Little
PowerPoint.
PowerPoint.
Photos with photos and arrows here and there.
Well, I can just run very quickly through the ones I've got. Economic development, as I indicated, they're working on housing. They've identified lots, sort of fairly big, large parcels in Rockport and who the owners are, and they're gonna reach out to some of those owners to talk to them about potential, and we'll hear more at our meeting in that attendance. Library committee, a totally unexpected $50,000 bequest from somebody,
Oh.
which is pretty cool.
That's nice.
Yeah, and we're looking for, we need to reach out to them to find out if it would be okay to publicize that, because I think that's such a great model to get the library or other facilities included in people's wills. No meeting of the ORC Parks, we spent a whole work weekend buying plants and getting Memorial Park cleaned up and over Goodrich Park, so hoping that more rain will settle those in. Well, Kim knows too, VPI, we're waiting for traffic studies that are gonna happen over the course of the summer. I had a question about the bridge, because Orion seems to be saying that the bridge is gonna be replaced. Is that just not being careful with the wording?
That's not being careful with the wording, I
Okay.
think, yeah.
Okay,
I mean, I think that's, yeah.
that's what we,
We have that,
It's wishful.
there
yeah,
was that,
that's what
dis-
we expect and think
right.
and all of that, but
yeah,
just
no.
wasn't sure if there'd been some more news.
Not
on
that I had heard, so, if so, yeah.
Legacy Rockport is actually doing some pretty exciting stuff right now in terms of updating and improving the signage down at Marine Park. I don't know, when you look at the explanation of the lime kilns, you know, how faded the sign is and the photos have gotten. So Heather Moran with Rockport Historical Society, and then James Lentz, who's getting his Eagle Scout Award with the Boy Scouts.
Who's that?
James Lentz? I think I got his name right. Anyway, he's working with some other masons and stuff to get together a nice information on the Vulcan locomotive, the whole quarry, how the whole system worked, and the lime kilns, the ice, and the shipbuilding. So they've got some new signage, and I think a question will be what kind of approvals. You know, the kiosk that's currently there, that would get sort of updated, and then there's a thought of there'd be another one like that. And then maybe some more signage related to, I think Heather's got some ideas with, you know, just great photos and explanations of sort of this history of Rockport.
Good.
And then MIDC, Midcoast Internet Development Corporation, we had a little table at the, on election day, and we got 220 residents who, you know, are interested in taking the fiber that we're doing. We got emails so we can stay in touch with people and really get some community support. We're working with GWI about what can be done to expand the current Rockport fiber line, even within the village, and market even what's there. There are people who don't even know that they have access to fiber that's cheaper than what they're paying Spectrum, and GWI just has never really marketed that. Shocking.
That's important.
Yeah. It is
That'd be
important.
nice.
It is, because also the financial arrangement with GWI is we own that fiber, but they're collecting all the money for now to pay off what it cost them to put that in. So the more people we can get to be paying them, the faster we'll pay them off, and then we can start collecting the money from that fiber internet.
Currently, it runs from where to where?
I think roughly the library to the town office,
Okay.
sort of down Central, up Main, and it goes up Union.
It goes up
Do you
Union.
guys have it?
Yeah, we have fiber.
And I know,
Even though
houses
Spectrum
up to
told us we
Hughes
didn't
Street.
need it.
That was nice of them.
That was nice of them.
Aw.
So this is the end of this end of the line.
Yeah, although like Deborah had it brought up to their church up there, the church
Oh.
up there, and I think some people on Mechanic Street.
Goes down to
extended
11
it.
Camden Street.
It does?
Yeah,
No.
Nice.
we paid for it when we had our office there.
Oh, okay.
We had poles set and,
Does it go out to like main media out there and stuff? I mean, all around?
the old Mariners building that we were in, we brought the fiber there.
Okay. So that's part of what we're getting from
So you've
GWI,
got
because I
that
don't
whole
know
stretch
all
that
where.
people probably aren't.
Don't know that they
No.
can sign up and it's cheaper, faster, better.
I like that. But it's not on Spear Street then yet.
I
Yeah,
don't
okay.
think so.
I'll hold off.
we got the tin can road.
Okay.
Okay, that's it for the liaison reports. I guess now we move into executive session.
Yep.
So we need a motion. Let's see if
And
that's-
the motion is,
and we've got to recite that statutory.
is it as simple as,
Right here.
I make a motion, to enter executive session to discuss a contractual negotiations pursuant, oh my goodness, let me start again.
You're good.
You're good,
No,
you're good.
Keep going. You're doing
I
great.
move the board enter executive session to discuss a contractual negotiations pursuant to 1 MRSA, section 405(6)(c).
Well done. Is there a second?
Yeah.
Jim? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Away we go.
Okay.